most everybody knows the introduction for the E-2 was not was a long thing because the airplane did not meet specs. It didn't meet specs as far as the airplane was concerned. It didn't meet specs as far as the equipment was concerned. And they've been working, I think they've been working on that for 50 years. And they still don't meet specs. And I've got copies of the specs here in my office. And I know that. And I know the guy that wrote it, the last Downing set of official gripes were done by Nick Vagianos, who was the Navy pilot assigned, and Nick and I are still on the phone with each other. He's been a good friend down through the years. Did an awful lot for the program, and we're pretty much in agreement about a lot of things. Basically, the introduction of the E-2 was long. It was pretty well controlled, but there was a lot of things. There have been a lot of things that were done for the airplane. It was slow. It did not do the job because of the fact that you couldn't keep it on the line. You couldn't keep all of it on the line back in the beginning, and there were many of the ships, particularly the Essex class ships, I guess, back in the Vietnamese introduction of the airplane, where they were back and they were counting on what the E-1 could do for them rather than the E-2, and I think everybody pretty well knows what went on back there, and it was a while to get going. The C-2 came along. We were ready for a C-2. We knew it was going to come early on. And basically, I was assigned, because I had done as much of the aero work on the E-2 as I had stalls, a lot of stalls, a lot of the performance work, determining the configuration of the basic airplane. So I wound up with a C-2, and I knew I was going to get it from the time, and I was told to get ready for it. We realized what had to be done. Walter Berndt did the carrier suit. We both agreed, and we had agreed on this for the E-2, that when the thing, hey, it doesn't have ejection, the E-2 doesn't have ejection seats, so and what are we going to do when we've got to and this wasn't particularly a Grumman problem. It was across the board. Oh, we can't do structural demonstrations and what have you with two people in the airplane, and then Walt and I got together, and basically what we said is, let's fly this thing single pilot. It'll never fly in demonstration work without people very, very close to it. Chase planes, it's always going to have a chase. And I was certainly game for that, and realized that, hey, two people trying to get out of an airplane that is broken up is going to almost guarantee that neither one of them is going to get out. Whereas if it's one, he may get out if you've got something where something major has come off. So that's the way we flew both airplanes. Walt flew it, flew the carrier suit, single pilot. I flew the whole structural on both airplanes, single pilot, and it worked out very, very well. As a matter of fact, after I flew the entire demonstration of 18 points, structural demonstration of 18 points on the C-2 on a single flight, and it worked beautifully. Beautifully. I had very good people in the control room, and we were watching it very closely, and it worked.
I'll give you a minute to catch your breath, Dave.
Yeah, I'm about to choke to death. Go ahead.
So now you're talking about the early test flights of the C2 was all single pilot, or the E2 and the C2 both were that way?
No, the build-up flights, if you needed an engineer aboard, and particularly for stalls, and I redid a very complex and complete stall program on the C2 to see if we could improve it in any way. And I think I'm the only guy that has flown the C2 or the E2 through a whole stall program where I didn't have a terrible wing drop, and I had very, very nice. The airplane was talking to me all along. It was a great set of. It was a great stall program, best stall flight I ever had. But we found out that that was because we did not take the tufts of yarn off the wing boots before we started that particular flight. They kept the yarn that was on with tape on the boots. And if you will remember early on in the game, that was something that we tried, and that's where Nick Baggianos came in, because he did the flying for the Navy on that, and we went out after we put on what we called Peterson pips, because Ron Peterson was the engineer who said, how are we going to get something that gives an airflow change at the boots that might be close to the yarn out there bubbling around and keeping the flow on the wing. And we came up with these additions to the boots. Nick felt it was better. I felt it was better. It wasn't as good as the yarn. And this is what we proposed. And I don't know how many sets of boots were made for the early E2, and that would have been E2Cs and C2s. Possibly they only wound up on a number of the C2s of the first buy. But they never, apparently somebody said it isn't as much, it isn't a good enough change, and it doesn't completely clear the wing drop, particularly the left wing drop on the stall of the C2, and obviously not of the E2, because I'm not sure any of the modified boots wound up on E2s. But that was one of the things that occurred. The C2 fleet indoctrination program, I blame how poor that was to the war. The fact that the way things were set up, I guess VRC 50 was up in Atsugi, and everything that went down to QB was going to go down there for a period of time. And we had recognized the fact that the additional complexity of the C2 over the C1 said that the squadrons that were operating the C1s, if you operated the C2 the same way, you very well might wind up in problem. And 4 of us made a trip around the world, visited all the major commands. And I may have said this in a previous discussion, but I wish the word had gotten down to the chiefs and to the operations officers in the squadrons and everything else. There was no question that what you have in the E2C2 community today, a combined, very dedicated group of people that are being trained for the peculiarities, if you will, of both of these airplanes, and the crews trained to handle what they are. has, I think, made all the difference in the world. And I just wish, and I'm sure you folks wish too, that there was time and energy and money available to do what has been done now. And that is, I think, this your foundation, the putting together of the E2 and C2 pilots to say, hey, we've got to make sure that the people who are driving these and operating these airplanes have all of the advantages of their peculiarities that, unfortunately, we, and when I say we, Grumman, the Navy, and everybody who has operated with these airplanes has been able to bring to light. And if all you have to do is look at at what happened to the early buy of the C2s and the number of accidents that occurred and accidents that shouldn't have occurred. And I think we all know that. We know that in a lot of airplanes. But hindsight is always very easy to come up with. But
so Dave, as I understand what you're saying is that you realize there were some technical difficulties, design difficulties with the airframe, and it took the Navy to fix that via training and all these fine young pilots that finally learned how to work through those challenges. Is that accurate?
yes, and I at one time had a boss, and I'm not going to use his name, who came out of the fighter world, and I could never get him to fly in the E2 or the C2 because I think it was a little bit too much for him because he was used to some of the work that has gone into designing and fixing problems in fighter types so that they can do their job. And unfortunately, we realize, I think all of us who fly have flown the airplane, that hey, it's tougher. It's tougher, and somebody, and I think it was in one of the latest articles concerning the 22s replacing the cod, that the airplane is unstable. No, it's not unstable. It's just marginally stable. The airplane meets its specifications, but we know that we haven't put the money into the control system. We, across the board, have not put the money into the control system that could fix it.
Dave, can I ask you a different question,
Yeah.
but related? And that is, I know you're very much involved with the Aviation Museum at Pax River. You're an avid follower of all things aviation. You're a vastly experienced test pilot. What have you seen about the E2D, and do you have any take on how the E2D is, shall we say, a game changer in naval aviation?
Well, let me say that because of what it does, I can't really comment on the improvements and the changes to the back end of this airplane, to the operational end of it. I do know that things have changed. Les Ryan's a friend, and we kind of live in the same community. So, and I've been fairly close to the work that has been done on the E2D, and Tom Booton and the rest of the guys. We talk on occasion, and I know that it has a tremendous capability. I can't comment other than the fact that it is going to be with the Navy for, I would say, a minimum of 10 years. And it will be improved on. Is enough to say that the work we in the airframe business are very, very much beholden to the avionicers that have made that airplane and made it grow the way it has grown. To my limited knowledge, and I hope it continues to do the job. I hope the airframe. I think it's there. It's still going to be the same airframe as far as flying qualities. You're still going to have to train people to fly it and fly it properly to do its job, and they should all realize that they're going to have to be trained a little bit more, maybe than some of the pilots flying other designs are going to be associated with. But I know that what it does now is absolutely fantastic, and it would make my work as the avionic demonstrator of the E1 when it came out, that's archaic.
Well, Dave,
as I am archaic.
Hey, we're getting close to the end of our discussion, and you're a man of a certain age. It's hard to tell because you're so eloquent and articulate. But what would you say to the young pilots and even test pilots of today that you've learned over your career?
I think the biggest thing I've learned as a test pilot, as a pilot, doesn't make any difference. The first big lesson I learned, I told in my first stories, I said, "Hey, I had a tough time. I had 3 accidents, and as it turned out, I can look and say with a certain amount of certainty that, hey, yeah, some of it was you, but it was also the fact that you were starting out in the game, and there were things that you hadn't been told, and that was pre-NATOPS, and that I was part of the NATOPS gang that some of our senior peoples didn't want to standardize, and if it hadn't been for Admiral Dunn and some of the things that he wrote, we wouldn't have gone to NATOPS. And so the first thing is, hey, it can happen to you. And if you go into this business thinking that, hey, it's not going to happen to me because I'm above all of this, or I'm this much better than you are, so therefore I can handle anything that comes along. Well, maybe you ought to get out of the business before you start it, because it isn't going to happen. And I think the type of thing that the Society of Experimental Test Pilots has brought along, and that is the fact that we've got to talk to one another. And when we're talking safety, there's no individual companies. There's no this guy's doing it better than the other. We've got to keep talking and realizing that things can be fixed. And our job in many ways is to say and put your feet down and say, hey, this is where it stops. And I think that is the biggest thing a test pilot should be able to do. And I think it's a very difficult thing to do in today's environment, and we're seeing it where there's some situations that have occurred that have cost airplanes and people.
That's great. Great commentary, David. I just want to say we could not be more appreciative of you sitting down with us and spending these last sessions with us talking about your career and the things that you've done. You are an inspiration to a lot of people, and we want more people to know about your story, because in many ways you're really part of the greatest generation of the test pilot world, and we really admire and respect what you've done. So thanks a million for being there for the Foundation's Oral History Project. I'll give you the floor for the last minute or so, but just want to say how much we appreciate you and what you've told us.
Well, coming from this group, I greatly appreciate it. However, I've got to say the same thing to you that I tell to everybody who says, hey, we thank you for your service. No, I thank this country.
That's great.
Giving me the opportunity to do what I never thought I'd have a chance to do.
Well, you've done it. You've done it well, Dave. Thank you so much for that. And I appreciate what you said too, because yeah, if it wasn't for this great country, none of us would have had the experiences that we did have and this opportunity to serve. But you really did go above and beyond. So thank you.
No, that area I disagree with you because, hey, I was there. I could have done it better, and you know it.
Okay, well, that's it for our session today. A great American and a great member of the E2 and C2 community. Always a real Hall of Famer to all of us. Thank you, Dave Seeman, for being part of this.